Am I the asshole for contaminating honey with peanut butter and not telling my peanut-allergic housemate? Yeah, this sounds bad, but hear me out. I live with, fake name, who is allergic to peanuts. He says he's fine if I eat them around him, but be careful with cross-contamination. I limit my peanut consumption, don't eat peanut foods around him just in case, and am careful when I do. I clean everything after. I don't want to take any risks because it's not my risk to make. 2 years and not a problem until last week. I have a doting mother who loves giving fancy gifts. Like my Easter basket this year, which had not much in the way of chocolate, but much in the way of homemade preserves and a jar of honey. Not your supermarket plastic tub, but a proper glass jar, and looked so fancy I expected to see the names of the bees listed on it. Nope, just the location the bees lived in. Now, we have some food rules. Bottle of milk in the fridge? Ours. The fancy honey with my name stuck on it for good measure? Mine. We're pretty good with not stealing each other's food, so I feel pretty safe with leaving fancy stuff in the kitchen. Only, I don't have much opportunity to eat fancy honey. I mean, pretty sure you're meant to do something special with fancy honey, right? Probably, but I don't know what. So last week when I made myself some toast, I made a childhood favorite, peanut butter and honey on toast. And because it was my honey with my fake name taped across the top, I didn't think twice before dipping that peanut butter knife in my fancy honey. Probably a waste of fancy honey, but we were out of regular honey. After I washed the knife and plate before putting them into the dishwasher and wiped down the bench just in case. I wasn't home a couple of days later when fake name decided to help himself to my honey. Now, following a hospital trip, he's home safe and we've had a chat about how to prevent such things in the future. But the question has arisen, who here is the me, for not writing contains nuts on the contaminated honey, despite knowing my fake name is allergic? Or, fake name, for looking at my fancy honey and deciding to help himself to just a little bit? I mean, it's pretty annoying to have someone else eat your food, but the punishment shouldn't be a potential death sentence. And let's face it, who hasn't swiped just a little bit of a spread or condiment which doesn't belong to them? And, time to fess up here, I'm the reason we were out of regular honey. We can't decide, so tell me Reddit, am I the Edit. Whoa. Did not expect this many comments. Can't answer them all, so I hope I didn't miss any. Q. Why didn't fake name use an EpiPen? He did. The EpiPen is to keep him alive until the ambulance arrived. Q. Why is it your fault there's no honey? Are you a honey guzzler, hoarder? Are you Winnie the Pooh? Gifted Easter basket at Easter. Ate chocolate, ate nothing else because it was kinda fancy. Fake name and self continued to eat the regular, communal honey, which is a cheap squeezy bottle. I happened to use the last of the regular communal honey, so added it to the shopping list, but no shopping took place between me using the last of the honey and fake name eating my honey. It was a matter of days, not weeks. I am not Winnie the Pooh. Q. Why didn't you rush out to replace the honey as soon as you finished it? Because it was honey, not toilet paper. Q. How often do you go grocery shopping? About once a week, though that seems unusual to some people. Q. Do you usually steal each other's food? Do you resent each other for stealing food? No and no. But that said, a dab of honey is no great crime. Q. Who had to pay his astronomical medical bill? The taxpayer. It's called public health. Q. He's gonna sue you. Bahahahaha. No. Q. Do you two hate each other? Nah. We had an initial argument mostly because we were both, him especially, scared shitless over the incident, but it soon delved into a, I'm the discussion. Q. What are you going to do moving forward? I chucked out the peanut butter and put a huge warning sticker on the honey warning about nuts in words and pictures. You'd be nuts to eat this. Contains nuts. Then a picture of 2 round nuts with a long nut in between. Despite 2 years of no issue, have decided that peanut butter is too big of a risk for cross-contamination. Investigating peanut-free nut butters. We'll move on and tease each other about the time I tried to kill him for stealing my honey. Q. Just how fancy is this honey? Fancy enough for a glass jar, not fancy enough to contain gold flakes or the names of the bees. Fancier than the squeeze bottle we normally buy. Not the asshole. This never would have happened if your roommate hadn't helped himself to your food without asking. This is all on him. Just a quick, "Hey, can I have a bit of your fancy honey?" would have prevented this entire situation, as you obviously would have told him, bro, I double dipped a peanut butter knife in that." Ask before you help yourself to other people's things. Not the asshole. Your roommate learned to leave other people's things alone. When you're highly allergic to foods, you only eat things you know are safe. If he hadn't been eating something that didn't belong to him, he would have been fine. Not the asshole. He knows and has approved you eating peanut products in the house. Therefore he knows there's a risk of cross-contamination with your foods. Something clearly labeled as yours is therefore not guaranteed safe, and the onus is on him to check with you around cross-contamination before helping himself to it. It's not unreasonable of him to have a bit, it's unreasonable, and therefore he's to blame you for his emergency when you had already taken steps to make it clear this was for you only. Nah. No one rises to the level of being an He used a little honey, a condiment. You did not have initial reason to think he would do that. With such a significant allergy, he should not be eating the food of others knowing the potential risks. With that said, you also live with someone with a very severe allergy and may wish to mark things as containing nuts going forward so this type of thing doesn't happen again. No assholes here, but I find it odd that you would contaminate your own incredibly shelf-stable fancy honey with the much less stable peanut butter. I mean, it's yours, so do what you want with it, but honey can last basically forever if you keep other food out of it. I'm leaning towards nah. You say, I'm the reason we were out of honey, which leads me to believe honey is usually communal. I can see him assuming it would be fine, since y'all share honey usually. It sucks that it happened, but I don't think anyone is particularly wrong here. From now on, he just needs to remember that if your name is on it, even if y'all usually skate that type of food, there's a risk. Not the asshole. You're not obliged to tell another adult about allergens in food he's not supposed to be, or in this case, be, eating right away. Apologies for the pun. I was tickled about the comment regarding the jars having all the names of the bees on it. Nah. Although given that peanut allergies can be pretty serious, it probably would have been nice to give your roommate a heads up just as a special caution. Dipping into someone else's honey is not a very serious crime, and even the slim chance that it might happen would be worth taking a small step to avoid it. I mean, pretty sure you're meant to do something special with fancy honey, right? No, just eat it however you normally would. Not the asshole for using your own honey, but next time use a second knife for the honey. Not the asshole. It's your food with your name taped to it. I know this sounds harsh, but if he was so freaking cautious about ingesting foods that might be contaminated with peanut, then he should know better than to dip into other people's food without permission. Nah. You don't seem mad at each other, and frankly you have no reason to be. Shit happens. You both learned a lesson. Your roommate now knows that food expressly marked as yours is potentially contaminated. You now know that your roommate can sometime help himself to your stuff even with your name on it. If there really has to be an asshole, I would go with the roommate, because after putting your name on fancy honey you had no way to know he would help himself, but he could have not taken your stuff. Nah. Couple thoughts, though. He shouldn't have eaten your food. You shouldn't have finished off the communal honey when you had fancy honey you could have used. Nah. Mistakes were made on both sides. This is so unusual. You guys seem to have communicated proactively about this, resolved the issue, and aren't about to start WWIII. Congrats on being reasonable and living with someone else who is too. As someone who always had reasonable housemates, I'm constantly baffled by some of the Muppets other people have to deal with. You are the asshole based on your comment that you typically share honey. I'm the reason we are out of honey. I don't think it was unreasonable he swiped some. Better off to tell him about the cross-contamination than to risk it. Not the asshole. Flatmate took the risk of eating something they didn't know was safe. That's their responsibility. If they had asked you if they could try the honey, you would have had the opportunity to consider whether you might have contaminated it. But they didn't ask, and that's why they're a bit the Obviously, we shouldn't be pleased that they hurt themselves in doing so. It's not a punishment, as you put it. It was misadventure caused by their carelessness. Since peanut butter is permitted in the house, it's not your responsibility to prevent your personal items being contaminated with it. Not the asshole. The housemate with a deathly allergy to peanuts should have known better than to take something they weren't 100% was not contaminated. They put their own health at risk, and the op shouldn't be expected to label foodstuffs they have no intention of sharing. Nah. Everything you wrote paints a picture of an unfortunate outcome of a hospital trip, but nothing that makes anyone an asshole. It's pretty annoying to have someone else eat your food, but the punishment shouldn't be a potential death sentence. Yeah, but you didn't mete out that punishment. He's the one with a nut allergy. You never promised to keep all your food nut-free. No assholes here, but if there was an asshole, it would be the person with a severe allergy who decided to play the peanut lottery with someone else's food. Not the asshole. If the rule was that the honey was yours, you weren't obligated to warn about the nuts in it. Your roommate is the asshole for stealing from you. Nobody is the asshole. According to the rules, he should have asked before helping himself to honey, and then you could have told him. No assholes here. While he shouldn't be swiping stuff that's not communal without asking. It's a condiment and you're not upset about it. TBH, is there even a conflict here? If neither of you are upset, then why are you here? Nah, but maybe just change the order you make it? Honey and then peanut butter? Nah, he was wrong to eat your food, yes. But moving forward, it seems a simple way to prevent accidental death. Not the asshole. Not their food. No assholes here. Maybe not the asshole? Your housemate shouldn't have eaten out of your honey jar, but you could have put a sticker with, contains nuts, or something. But I don't think anyone is the asshole. Just a mistake from your housemate. Not the asshole. If he stole a stranger's food that contained nuts and got sick, it would be his fault. Just because he stole the food of someone he knew and got sick doesn't mean it's still not his fault. Nah, it was an accident. You didn't expect him to eat it. He didn't think you'd get mad if he used a bit of spread, and it doesn't sound like you are. No assholes here. Your roommate isn't a goblin for being rude and already paid big time. But you aren't at fault for anything when it's your property and not something difficult to avoid. Nah, I can't call the roommate the asshole for what he did, exactly, but the image of a grown man with a life-threatening allergy dipping into a homemade food, not a labeled jar with all the ingredients on it, is pretty sketchy. He didn't know where OP's mom bought it or if she made it, and what ingredients were in it, notwithstanding OP's cross-contamination. The jar itself could have been previously used for something with nuts, and not properly sterilized. Not the asshole. Here's the thing about allergies. Who hasn't swiped a little bit of allergic people that are still alive? If you have allergies, it's on you, in this case on your roommate, to know they can't do that. They cannot indulge in stealing a little bit, because they might die. If you guys have a rule about food sharing, you're not the asshole. You're not at fault because your roommate shouldn't have touched your honey in the first place. Not the asshole. It was labeled as yours, so the right thing would be for your roomie to ask before they help themselves to it. But also do not dip contaminated cutlery into the honey. Honey is sweet enough so that it will not go bad on its own, but if you cross-contaminate it, you can introduce something that will mold or rot, which will ruin all of your fancy honey. Not the asshole. Your roommate should know better than to steal food that's yours, especially when he has an allergy and said food could have contaminated. He's responsible for his allergy, and swiping fancy honey without your permission is a cheap move. Not the asshole. Not sure why being out of normal honey stopped you using a different knife to avoid spoiling your fancy honey though? NTA. If he is gonna use your stuff, the least they could have done is ask. He is the one with the allergy. Is his responsibility to make sure he doesn't eat nuts. Not yours. So if he was gonna take it, he should have asked. Now he knows not to eat anyone else's stuff, more so cause he has allergies. Not the asshole. Your roommate would be the asshole for swiping a bit of honey. Not the asshole. Your name was on it and your roommate stuck his proverbial fingers into the unknown. The understanding in your living situation is when your name is on food, then no one else can touch it. I'm going no assholes here for basically all the reasons Op put in the post. Op didn't do anything wrong. Roommate was a little wrong, little stupid too, but roommate really got a disproportionate punishment for such a minor infraction. The karma more than settled itself here. No assholes here. I get where both of you are coming from. My brother has a very serious nut allergy, so we were always really careful. I remember when we were teens he borrowed my lip balm, pot of Vaseline, without asking and had a reaction because I had eaten a cherry Bakewell, contains almonds, a few days earlier when I was out of the house and must have used my lip balm after. Thankfully nothing serious, but he looked like a Kardashian for a couple of days. I felt so guilty, but realistically it wasn't my fault. I couldn't know he would use it when I want around. Sometimes people have lapses of judgment, especially when it comes to stuff you wouldn't typically expect to find allergens in. I guess both of you just have to take reasonable precautions to avoid problems like this in the future. Speaking as someone deathly allergic to peanuts, not the asshole. It was not house honey and it was clearly labeled as yours. If he wanted to use some, he should have checked with you first if you were okay with that, and then you'd likely have told him it was unsafe. When you're severely allergic to foods, you have to be absolutely sure of what you're eating, and if you're unsure, or it doesn't belong to you, you simply just don't eat it. I love the way you write. I would read a book about this adventure. With special mention for the bees at the end. Not the asshole roommate should stay away of your food. Not the asshole, you don't take food that isn't yours without permission. You doubly don't take it if you have allergies and cannot or haven't not verified beforehand that it won't result in a hospital trip. Not the asshole, but you could keep him out of all your food by adding the label, contains nuts. Nah. LMAO. Everyone's acting like the roommate is the spawn of Satan when OP has given no such indication of previous issues. In fact, he seems like a pretty alright guy, being understanding with his allergy and not banning peanuts from the house. Same goes for OP, who just slipped up and forgot to mention the honey was contaminated. Yeah, it's annoying that he tried to swipe some honey, but OP mentioned that they themselves are the reason that they're out of honey. I don't see any malintent on either side here. Just a simple misunderstanding that you were able to work out. He learned to be more mindful of other people's stuff, and you learned to be more careful with cross-contamination. Not the asshole. I wouldn't steal a housemate's food, and I especially wouldn't if I had a bad allergy and couldn't guarantee something was free of that allergen. Not the asshole. Busted. You're not the asshole. It's not even as bad as the time I made a tuna sandwich, with cat food and leaving it in the work fridge for the lunch thief. Nah. Not the asshole when you have allergies you don't take other people's food. That's 100% on him.